Hello, and welcome to a MOTS production of
MOTSterpiece Theatre,
where we review critically acclaimed cinema spanning the breadth of human filmmaking.
MOTSterpiece Theatre,
Spoilers, mature content, inappropriate language. Join us.
MOTSterpiece Theatre. MOTSterpiece Theatre.
Welcome to MOTSterpiece Theatre. Today we're doing the AFI 73, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I'm Jonathan Ian Manzer, here with Scott Thurma.
I am not the Sundance Kid.
And Stephen Ramosi.
Hey, I am the Sundance Kid.
And
Tell.
I'm more or less Butch Cassidy, I suppose. So, Steve, you had a synopsis?
It's the new Newman's Own flavor. Butch Cassidy and the Sun-Dried Tomato Vinaigrette.
Yes.
Ooh. So, I'm going to give the actual synopsis for those of you who haven't seen this movie. It's sort of a departure from traditional westerns with keeping all of the kind of stylistic elements. It centers around Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, obviously. Butch Cassidy is a charming. He claims to be the brains of the operation, but he's generally flawed in that. He's a smooth talker. The Sundance Kid is a very good shot, but only if he's moving, oddly enough, which is a kind of weird thing.
Take his gun fu.
Yeah. So they're in the West doing the traditional robberies. Progress starts overtaking them as they're kind of relics of outlaws from the yesteryear. They end up escaping to Bolivia, where they resume their old habits and get murdered by the army.
Well, it's implied,
Yeah.
but never outright shown or stated.
Yeah, I assume they're not that good.
They could have won.
Yes, they could have.
Anyway.
So let's go into the introduction. Scott, would you like to begin?
Sure. So it starts off with, as the credits roll, it's in sort of a montage of old-time Western-style photographs. And I believe the little scroll was, once upon a time, they ruled the West. Like, it was Butch Cassidy, Sundance Kid, and the Hole-in-the-Wall Gang, I believe. And it's something like, it's almost like a silent movie style, framed that as such. And it gives you that. And I think, let's see if you guys agree with me, the intro probably cuts off, or Act 1 starts when they get back to their gang's hideout and discuss what their next plan is. Like, I think that's sort of, everything before that sort of set up for their characters.
This is a fascinating question because I was thinking about this. Because this is not a traditional three-act story.
Yeah.
In sense, it's almost...
yes or no.
It's almost two movies put together.
Yeah,
right.
I was going to say that about it, sure.
So I would say the introduction is up until they go to Bolivia.
See, I was thinking that that same thing myself, but that means half the movie then is the introduction, which... Yes, it sort of fits. I see what you're saying, because first of all, I just want to put on record that this is an odd movie to me, and not the most positive way. Many times, and you'll hear why later. But to me, I was considering that same thing, like I said. But I think the actual intro is just to their characters, and then when they do the first train robbery, I think that's the kickoff of the actual action. So the intro stops just before that. To me,
I might say that up until they do the second train robbery, where the posse starts hunting them.
That's a good. I mean, that's
the
fair.
Terminators of the West.
The Terminators of the West start hunting them.
Terminator Riders, yes.
Might be the intro, which is a pretty long intro.
That's what I'm saying. But I think the actual setup is what I said.
I think it's either right after the opening credits, because really, I feel that the opening credits are very important. I'm fascinated by the fact that I'm watching a movie about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid while watching a movie about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And it really shows the kind of traditional storytelling of the West there, where they're obviously the bad guys. There you have the hero.
They're anti-hero.
Well, no, but not in the overall movie, but in the silent film that you see. It's very traditional. It's establishing them as not monsters, but thieves.
Rough and
you kind of see them
dudes.
just robbing the train and running all over the place. And
it really provides the framework for how you have to analyze this movie. So I would say either the introduction is all the way to Bolivia, or it cuts right off the first in the credits. But I will allow myself to be convinced otherwise.
Well, so the reason that I think it starts when they start, when the posse shows up, is the entire thing before that is kind of setting up who they are and why they're doing what they're doing. And then as soon as they start getting chased, it turns into the movie that it eventually becomes, where they're on the run for most of it. And like even when they eventually later go to Bolivia, there's still kind of that sense that there's something or someone that's hunting them throughout the entire film. I think after that part,
You may have convinced me there.
up until that point, they're just kind of like happy-go-lucky like bank robbers, and like you learn that Butch
But they're always
is like, yeah, but they're on the run after that. Like
Yes.
it
I don't
everything
disagree
kind of
with
changes about the film at that point. But like up until that point, they're just like having a good time, like hanging out. After that, it's like they're in a life or death.
I would also like to bring up that not only are they hanging out and having a good time, but Sundance kind of is not a very good person. He's not a bad person. He's just very like kind of solitary, and
You're right.
Sundance is like very like withdrawn, and he's kind of
Well, he's a
almost
stoic to the charming robe.
Right.
And I feel that he's almost that stereotypical old school kind of to be the foil to Butch's having like Butch,
outgoing, yeah.
Like he doesn't want to harm anyone. In fact, I think later on he admits that he hasn't even shot anyone before, besides being this notorious bank robber. And you see that like when they're robbing the trains, there's this guy Woodcock, which is one of the great funny parts of this film. He appears twice because they rob the same train once ago, and he's on both of them. And,
Well, he's on the same train, going each way.
they're protecting the money both times, and they're having like, come on, and it's like, no, I got to protect Mr. E.H. Harrison's or whatever.
Earhart's movie, Money.
Harrington, E.H. Harrington, I think. Yeah.
So, I don't know. There's a lot of levity at the beginning. You see that they're not terrible individuals, even though they do what are socially considered bad acts. So I don't know. I really liked the whole. I felt it was very charming at first.
I was not particularly charmed by a number of things in this movie, but to our question on hand, I think I'll grant you that since that point does set up the like action and an antagonist that wasn't present before. I'll agree with you that that's a good place to call the introduction, and if they were calling it that, then I think it was a fine one.
I mean, yeah, I think a good argument could be had for every other thing that we mentioned here. Right after the silent movie cuts off, that's kind of the introduction to how the world viewed them, I guess.
Yes.
And then you got to learn about them as people, and then it turned into like the Buddies on the Run movie that it eventually became. And the whole like starting over in Bolivia thing was kind of like a new introduction, I guess, kind of like
it's almost like
it is almost like two movies, though. I agree with that.
It reminded me a lot of Red Dead Revolver, or Red Dead Redemption. I'm sorry, where they have different set pieces, and you kind of start over in this new area
kind of.
like several times in the game. Like that was kind of, I see a lot of influences from this film in later works, like in a lot of places. I think I saw them.
But I saw a lot of influences from prior works as well. Is that what you're referencing?
No, I'm saying that this film influenced a lot of later works.
But it itself is definitely influenced by previous things.
Sure,
I agree with
of
that.
course.
Sure.
It actually reminded me of Full Metal Jacket a little bit, with kind of the divide in narrative between the two.
I kind of like that. Yeah.
Not as extreme as Full Metal Jacket was, because that was
Right.
distinctly
But it's
two different movies.
It's basically two separate stories that are strung together in one longer movie. I
with
agree with
an
that.
overarching theme. So, does anyone have any else to say about
I think that was fine, and I'll give it a 1 for my official score.
yeah, I'm gonna give it a 1
I
as
think
well.
it was a fine intro.
I'm going to give it a 1
I enjoyed it.
as well. So, Steve-O, the body.
So throughout after that intro, I'm taking the intro as
Where
the
we
second
called it.
train robbery and going from there. So basically, at that point, it turns into them running for their lives throughout the West, whatever state they're. I think at some point they even say they have no idea where they
Crossing
are.
various states.
But yeah, so it turns into them running, and in a lot of ways, this would not. If someone different had directed this, I don't think it would have held my attention at all. Or if there were different actors. But these guys, I thought, carried the dialogue between them very well. Like they had really good chemistry, which invested me in their story, what was going on with them. The sets pieces were awesome, just the landscapes and all that. So like that was kind of the visual narrative that I was picking up from it. So they end up running from this group of like the most badass,
Posse, yeah.
you know, hired hands ever that are hired to hunt them down by the guy that owns the trains.
E.R.
We just said it and I already forgot.
E.R. Harrington or something like that.
E.R.
Who's actually based off a true character person.
Yeah.
Well, actually, all of this is based off a true story.
Right. And so what happens is they luckily get away from this posse at some point and they decide that they should just hightail it. They got to get out of there. So they end up going to Bolivia.
Well, first of all,
With Eddie Sundance's girlfriend and
Also,
both of their girlfriends.
well, no, she's not his girlfriend. She's like they're just very close, oddly close.
It's
I
an
guess.
odd triangle, but I guess I know that's what they.
But clear, like there's a clear distinction that this is Sundance's girlfriend and
his
like
main squeeze, I guess.
Yeah.
But I just wanted you neglected to mention that Sundance mentions or Butch mentions going to Bolivia like earlier.
he does earlier. I think that's even before the end of the intro.
I believe it's twice prior to that.
Yeah.
So like that plan was sort of floating around. It's not that just
And that
randomly
happens.
decided
That
to
happens
go
a
there.
lot in this film, where like they mention things over and over and over again. Like while they're being chased the entire time, they're saying, "Who are these guys?" Because they're just like every time they think they're going to give them the slip, they just refuse to lose the trail. So anyway, they end up going to Bolivia. I don't know when the climax starts. I'm going to say maybe when Eddie leaves.
Yes, I agree completely.
That would be where I cut it off. So like they end up pulling a couple bank robberies in Bolivia, and they become notorious, the Banditos Yankees. You know, at some point they try to go straight, but it all goes downhill really quickly. The guy that they're working for gets shot in the middle of a trail.
Enough bandits ruin their chances of winning.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. Like it was a quick irony position where they try to go straight and are hired basically to protect the money from themselves.
Yeah.
Like the specter of themselves, and they end up getting robbed by a third.
And they themselves
smaller
become Woodcock in that situation,
Yes.
which is
In fact, when you were talking about repetition, they not verbatim. These Woodcocks are very kind of
He's this corporate guy. He's
square
a
kind
yes
of guy.
man.
But their dialogue reflects a lot of what Woodcock
Right.
said
Yes.
to them.
and
It's a similar vein.
that's very. I think that's very obviously like on purpose.
Sure,
and,
it is. Yes.
I don't know. I really liked that section of it as well. I liked a lot of this movie, probably a lot more than you, Scott. I don't know about Ian, but from our brief discussions after the film was over, I know I enjoyed it more. But like anyway, that kind of all goes down. So their attempt to go straight is kind of screwed up. Eddie, Sundance's girlfriend, decides to go back to America, and that's kind of where the climax begins.
I agree with that. Parsing out, yes.
So I would like to bring up the people who are chasing them and how
Well, I was going to
well
wait
it
to
was-
antagonist to
Yeah,
bring
but,
it up.
but this is part of the body.
Okay.
It's
Fair enough.
at least the shots of them,
Mm-hmm.
because you never see them up close. And in fact, as the it starts getting a little bit closer to them, but they're always
Right.
in the distance.
Sure.
As they kind of discover facts, you get to, as the audience, observe the facts that they've discovered after the fact. So it was a very effective chase scene. Like the tension was, and you yourself are like wondering, who the hell are these guys?
Yeah. As they keep saying it, like
There's this one fantastic scene where it's at night and they decide to get on one horse and send the other horse off in the other direction in order to split up the chasers. So you're actually, all you can see are the lanterns in the distance. So you get to see each individual. They start to split up, and then they realize and just go back.
yeah,
It's such you actually really, I feel the tension of what Butch Cassidy and Sundance are going through in these scenes. And I really like the speculation that they were having. They're reaching for, in a sense, straws. However, who can these be? Like, who are the legends that can be after us? And I'm actually kind of disappointed that they confirmed who these people were. I thought it'd be more like through the newspaper articles. I thought it'd be more interesting if it was like you almost never find out. I was kind of like disappointed when they are, and when they get to Bolivia, they start seeing like one of the guys wears a white straw hat.
yeah,
So they see a guy with a white straw hat, and they're like, "Oh, it must be the guy after us." So it's kind of like, in a sense, death haunting them.
Right.
Like they should have died at a point, and this is like the never-ending train that's coming after them. And I thought that entire chase scene, which you're absolutely right, Steve, if done under a different director, would have been boring, but I was entertained the entire time throughout it.
What I was going to say is, and I can make a comparison to actually Mad Max in this sense, something that you brought up with Mad Max Fury Road, the sense of distance that was maintained throughout this entire chase scene in the American West was perfect. Like, so good. You never knew exactly how far away they were. They were always like these dots in the distance, but they were like death personified, and they were chasing Butch and Sundance like throughout the what was it, like 45 minutes they were just being chased.
Something like that.
They're always in the distance. They're always coming, like they're always approaching, and you could tell when they're getting closer, despite the fact that you don't really know how far away they are. The way that the film played with space on those like huge open landscapes was so well done and made it so much more tense.
It really captured the sense of being hunted.
Right.
I agree with a large part. Yeah, it was framed and shot very well, yes, and it was a well done like sense of a inevitable like we said something like they're just the Terminators riding horses, and yeah, I got that sense of being hunted. That's true, but there's something about the body at large that was like meandering to me, and maybe it's because of the fact it felt like two movies. Yeah, the chase stuff was fine, but some of the other stuff I think could have been cut out.
Bolivia,
and, like that was the interesting part of it. Yes, Bolivia dragged on for me.
Yes. I was getting tired by the end of it.
Like, I wouldn't have minded if they spent 20 minutes, adding on to the chase scenes and cut that out of the Bolivia part, because it got a little grating at the end.
Yeah, Bolivia.
So I'm sorry. I was gonna I wasn't sure what I was gonna rate the body, because it was meandering. Like I said, I started to lose interest in it at times. But the parts that were excellent, like you said, were like that specifically, showing the distance in the chase and so forth, and the cloud of dust always just beyond the horizon, essentially coming at them. Yeah, that was all cool, but a lot of it too was just like dull. But outside of that, but that's part of the body.
So, what I wanted to impress in this part was actually that I think that Bolivia was certainly less focused, because they didn't have that impending sense of of death. And
I suppose
Bolivia was more of a relationship section of the they
sure.
were all working out their relationships, including Eddie. Butch and Sundance have their relationship, which is obviously the biggest one of the entire film. But this is more of them kind of playing off of each other, as opposed to having a singular focus of trying to get away, I think. Which I didn't really mind it. It was a little bit more meandering, and it was a little bit slower, but I still enjoyed those parts. And I liked the learning Spanish so that they could rob the banks out there and that type of thing.
It could have been more focused, but first of all, there is a section between them leaving the West. And
it's another montage, which I'm going to bring up.
Which is the strangest montage in the world.
There were two strange montages. That one, yes, is one of them. The other one, the part that I think sort of broke out, was when Butch comes back to visit Sundance and Edie at their little hideaway house, and he has a bicycle, and it's like a weird 60s music video montage, Wayne Just Keep on My Head or is being sung at you while he rides the bicycle around the farm.
A bicycle he's never seen before.
Yeah, or used.
Picked up
apparently
a couple minutes ago, and it can now do awesome.
It was just so bizarre. If we still talked about immersion, or at least specifically as a question, I would say that was completely out of place and could have been completely removed from the film. However, before I give Steve the floor, I want to mention one thing. The setup for the bicycle was excellent, because that was one of my favorite scenes, or that got to me, where what happens is a sheriff is trying to rally the townspeople to go chase them down, while again, ironically, they're actually staying in the hotel watching the speech happen, and the crowd is very lackluster, not enthused at all. And the sheriff's getting increasingly exasperated, and all of a sudden an old man steps up, and you think he's going to volunteer something, but no, he starts selling the people a bicycle, which is quite excellent.
So wait for the future.
That scene was excellent, and should not have been cut, but the other bicycle scene should have.
The bike scene was really strange, I will give you that, but it was clearly there to set up the relationship between the three of them.
I guess, but they could have done it in a different way, or
I forgot about the
better
bicycle scene until you guys brought it up.
It was so strange. It was just...
That was one of the parts that to me was dragging on.
No, the montage of old style photography was very strange as well.
I thought actually, yes, but it wasn't.
I kind of like that actually.
It wasn't egregious as the bike one, and I thought it was a fine segue, fine transition.
The third montage though is the best, which kind of reminds me of I guess Hard Day's Night or some of those Beatles kind of thing, where they're robbing the banks and it's just like the cops chasing after them. It's almost a
Benny Hill scene is what we said.
Yeah, in Bolivia, yeah.
And they have the greatest soundtrack to it. All like
It's just odd. Again, maybe it's an artifact of the time it was made and so forth. But
the best part, the biggest laugh was certainly when the music, like the Bolivian or the Bolivian like police force is like riding up to like chasing them down, and like there's this music going on, like this, not exactly Benny Hill, but like close enough for government work. Anyway, they're like riding up. All of a sudden, the music stops. Butch, Sundance, and Eddie are all in a tree, like firing down at them. It's like all this gunfire sound, and then the music starts up again, and they turn around and like ride up.
back down the hill. Yeah, it's just,
I love that scene, but it's tonally strange.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's very bizarre. And so those points, I was just like, it's odd. Like, I couldn't. It lost me there, and then never fully got me back. I kind of held it against the film,
Although while we're
fairly or not, but
so Bolivia, actually, what I think they did well in Bolivia was that they for the end of, I guess, the middle section of it is them being chased down, and they really build tension very well. They do a great job of almost eliminating that tension with making you think that everything's not going to be all right.
Right.
But like you see them happy again, and like in their
it lulls you into it for a bit.
False sense of security. Yeah. So the fact that actually kind of spiral down quickly, almost in a sense, especially how like that's the thing is, a lot of the happiness or a lot of the meandering occurs during the happy parts.
Yes.
And then all it requires is that one thing for everything to start going south very quickly. Eddie decides to leave them when things start getting rough. In a way, they try to go legit, and like they meet this crazy old man who runs a mine. Like, I'm not crazy. I'm just
colorful. Yeah. And then he gets shot dead.
That's what you get for living by yourself in Bolivia for 10 years.
And he gets shot dead a second later after that happens, which is kind of jarring as well.
But so yeah, I think it was a purposeful kind of meandering.
Yes, but that doesn't make it any less, boring in a sense, for lack of a better word. Like, it just lost me because it was, it did a good job of meandering, but meandering is meandering. It's making you, it's stretching out the time. It's padding almost to me. But that's what it came down to in my mind.
But considering that we have the body is such a large section of this movie, since the chase scene was great and Bolivia had its moments, overall I'm going to have to judge this positively.
I guess you kind of convinced me. That's a good point. Like I said earlier when we started on this, I was going to give it a 0, but since, yes, the chase scenes were part of it, and that did a very good job, both cinematographically and narratively, to build up tension, and I think that will sway me to giving it a 1.
All right. Well, I'm going to definitely give it a 1. I actually didn't mind the
I know. You enjoyed
kind
it
of
more
slowness in Bolivia. So that's going to be a 1 for me.
Boredom in Bolivia.
I'm giving it a 1 as well.
We're all giving it a 1. All right.
Well, there's llamas there. How can you?
There's just fucking llamas, man.
Yeah.
And by the way,
The face
Spectre.
the face,
Gonna
that,
mention
the face
that.
that Sundance makes when he steps in like llama shit or whatever sums up my feelings for the boring parts of this movie.
so the conclusions are going to actually be very short here, since we cut it off where we did. Eddie leaves. They're kind of their spirits are broken.
Somewhat adrift, I think.
Yes.
More adrift than they were before.
They're like they get recognized. Actually, it's funny. I mentioned like it's the 2 white guys, the cowboys. How are people not recognizing them immediately? And as I said that, someone recognizes them immediately. Which kudos to the film for answering my question. So like the police engage them. The army shows up. It's a neat action set piece where they're trying to get they weren't preparing for battle, so they only brought a few bullets with them. Most of their ammo is on the horse, so they have to rush out into fire while Butch rushes out in fire to get the ammo while Sundance covers them. And there's just too many people. They kill I think 10 people or so.
Yeah.
Sundance is cutting down people.
Yes.
True.
I honestly, I think it's a really well done action sequence, especially for a movie that came out in 1969. Mm-hmm. The fight choreography was really good in it, and it was, especially for Butch and Sundance, like kind of the police just running around on the top of the walls wasn't that great, but like the whole running out of bullets, you got to go get to the mule, and come back with the other bullet. What the hell are those things? Bandoliers. I thought it was really well done, and it's a fairly compact climax. It's a fairly drawn out fight, like gunfight scene, but not that. It's not that long before the final
more egregious
scene of the.
No, it's fine. I think it's perfectly paced.
And the thing that I always hate in westerns is like how fake the gunfights seem, and this film didn't really seem that way.
Well, what was fake was the blood, which I'm pretty sure was
That's true.
Newman's own ranch dressing.
Russian dressing.
Russian dressing.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I agree. Like, yeah, the final battle was quite well done, and it didn't last any longer than it needed to, but nor was it too short, nor was it too abrupt.
But
I guess
narratively, was it a satisfactory conclusion?
it was, because
I thought so.
First of all, there's a trope named after it called the Bolivian Army ending, which is what this one codified it. And like, I think because it was a strong conclusion, it left me like with a positive attitude at the end of the film, because like I said, it was sort of stretching my patience for a bit, but I think it brought it all back together very nicely. And I like that the final shot is them running out into.
You both saw. Speaking
gunfire.
of, but Paul Newman. Like, have you both seen Cool Hand Luke?
Yes.
Yeah. This ending reminded me exactly of the ending from that movie.
I agree
as
with
well.
that. Yeah.
Which is just like the lone kind of outlaw personality.
Yeah.
Being overwhelmed by the authority. So again, it's not particularly unique, because I feel like there's a lot of endings similar to this in the 1960s era films. So I'm really torn, because to me, like I guess that's the point, is that it's just these are charismatic people that you grow to like, and they get a unsatisfactory death.
Well, no, I don't think it's unsatisfactory. I agree it's not like perhaps the most unique thing in the world, but I think if they're going to use it, it was used well, and it made sense to broadly what happened, what they set up, and what had come before, what led up to it.
I would agree with you, Scott. I do not think it's unsatisfactory at all. In fact, I think this is like the inevitable scene that you're waiting for since the moment they started being pursued. And like, this is kind of what has been like the entire film has been building up to, is like this ending. Not only like with their last like moments of like talking to each other about Australia and like all that stuff, and then rushing out, and like that final freeze frame that's super famous now. Like, I thought that it was well done. And yeah, you'll see similar endings in a lot of films, but like I said before, a lot of films have done that since then. Actually, I was going to mention this final scene. Did anybody else think of the death scene in Planet Terror when
kind of? No, I didn't.
Like
think
when they were like just bantering back and forth at the end. Like, it kind of reminded me of the scene in Planet Terror where like giving recipes back and forth.
That's funny. I didn't think about it at the time.
Butch Cassidy's rip-off of Planet
Yes,
Terror.
but no, I mean, I see the comparison, and I think it's amusing.
Actually, since you brought up that discussion they had right at the end, that was a very not touching, but I think did add an element.
It made sense again to the characters.
Well, it was them like refusing to give up the relationship that they had always had together, and it's still, despite the fact that they're facing overwhelming odds, they know they're going to die. You can see that they still have this
they're with each other
rapport,
to the end.
And that's a good segue into themes. So, because that outlaw kind of mentality that all of these. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 1 for them because of that little scene right there. Does characterize them very well.
I'm going to give it a 1, but because I liked it overall.
Yep, I'm going to give it a 1 as well.
Not just for what you said.
Okay, Scott, would you like to start on themes?
Sure. So I believe, if you guys disagree with me, let me know. But I think actually you said it pretty well. They're best buddies, and they're sort of times are moving beyond them, and that all they know is this life. So they're going to try to work with it the best they can. But their time is coming to an end. The age of outlaw heroes is about to close. The curtain's about to close on that. So they do what they can with the skills they have, and stick with each other throughout it, and go out in a blaze of glory, more or less.
Right. I
think that's a major theme, at least.
The bike is an obvious metaphor for that.
Which I believe
they make a point of talking about that. And then what does he say?
I was going to bring this up in dialogue, but we all enjoyed the line was what happens before they leave for Bolivia. Butch, to get rid of his bicycle, sends it flying down the hill, sailing down the hill, going
ghost riding it.
Saying something like, "Here's the two damn bicycles. here's the future, take it, or something like that.
Yeah.
But so I recommend you watch this, and then next time you're driving along and see someone on a bike,
Yell
open
at a
the door and and yell at them. But your point on that is true. But I think a lot of the '60s kind of the movies I mentioned, Cool Hand Luke. You have Easy Rider. All of these are in the similar vein, and I think it's also kind of the fact that in the 1960s there's like kind of a lot of both social unrest,
Sure.
but also
Like, you have to take it in context of the time, no doubt. I agree with that.
Kind of this is the part where technology started really so I feel that idea of the world's getting very Cold War mentality, the progress is coming up, and also that kind of rebellious attitude. So these are people defiant in all those movies, defiant to the end, keeping their mentality, not changing
in the face of
that kind of progress and order that's coming after them.
That's almost exactly. I just wrote down, this kind of attitude of like sneering in the face of authority, but also eventually being crushed by it, and you can't. It's the same idea as like you can't outpace the way that society is going.
Society will always crush you. Yes,
but that's the thing, is they're making them tragic figures. That these are people who should succeed in life, off of intelligence, off of skill, and off of ability. Both Butch and Sundance possess the skills necessary, or what socially we should have in order to be successful in life.
Yeah, but that isn't enough, is what basically
they're not enough, and it's that they're refusing to bend the knee in a sense and are crushed for it, and it's like making them those tragic heroes. Even though theoretically we should be not in Easy Rider particularly, but in Cool Hand Luke, he's a good guy, but he's unrepentant.
We're rooting for criminals, essentially.
In this one, we're rooting for people who are legitimately criminals. So I don't know. I really respect that, but so it's an interesting theme that is present in all of these. But I don't know if Butch Cassidy and Sundance. Or let me ask you guys this: is there anything in here that elevates that theme beyond what these other films have done?
I would say not particularly, and that sort of maybe is a reflection of what I thought about the body of itself, how it's portrayed. Like, I agree that those themes are excellent, are commented upon very nicely, but not in the sense that you haven't seen before. They just told a good story, and that those happen to be the themes contained within, more or less, to me.
I mean, I'm not sure that there's anything to elevate them above other films that kind of have the same theme that do it well, but I'm not. I don't think that. I don't know if a comparison to other films of the time is, if we're looking at what we're going to give the score, a 1 or a 0. I don't know if that's necessarily what I'm going to base it on. I think that the themes that it did well.
But why does it deserve this position in the AFI and not personally?
I don't know that answer myself.
Cool Hand Luke better addressing these, and in most aspects of that movie. So I would actually rank this Cool Hand Luke above this film.
It's funny. I largely agree with that. As I said to you guys right after the movie, that I don't see what the big deal about this movie is, having seen it before, but doing it for this. It's fine, but it's not amazing. There's nothing about it. Even within the themes that we just said they addressed, they're there and they worked well enough, but it doesn't elevate itself, like you said.
Stylistically, it does.
Sure, but that's not a theme.
It doesn't.
I agree with that.
Narratively, I think it's on par with most other 1960s kind of anti-authority kind of movies.
I somewhat agree, but the thing is, I think I'm gonna be lenient on it. I wasn't going to before, but at the end of the day, I think they addressed them well enough, and they were clear. I guess when we say here on Bon Mots that if a theme is clear and addressed well, and it wasn't clouded or obfuscated in any way, it was obvious what they wanted to address and did it, I think I'll give it credit for that.
I also want to bring up another quick theme. I thought it was very interesting. We mentioned it earlier, but the relationship between Butch and Sundance. Because
I found that oddly jarring a bit too.
No, because I feel that it's kind of almost idealized empowerment of a female that the 1960s.
I don't know about that.
No, she's has her own agency. Yeah, she's basically dating two guys, both who represent almost different. you have the sensitive intellectual and the like gruff,
Tough guy,
domineering
sure,
guy.
I get it.
And
but
she has, in a sense, power over both of them. She's allowed to make her own choices.
I don't know, like there was a conversation between them when they decide to leave and they invite her to come with. Sundance says something. If you whine or complain, I'll dump you on the side of the road. Like,
Yeah,
and
Butch
she was like,
gives her the look like, don't worry about that.
and she says, I'll do whatever you want, except watch you die. Like, I don't think it was the greatest portrayal of a woman in this situation, but
Yeah, but it's not, like...
it's a relic of the times, perhaps again, sure, but I wasn't particularly impressed with that aspect of it. To what you were saying, like just now, yeah, I don't know.
I never felt like even so. The first scene where you meet her,
which is jarring and
he's
odd
holding
as well.
like a gun to her, and like it looks like he just like stole into this person's house and is like making her undress, but like clearly that's not the case. They know you find out they know each other, and like obviously they're in a relationship, but she never feels like her character never feels like she is subservient to either one of them in any actual way. Then when she decides to leave, they say whatever you want. Like she doesn't like she just decides to leave and then she's out of there. Like it's not like they're like no you can't leave or like anything like that. They never even think of doing that. When he says I'll dump you, I mean whatever. I
see what you're saying, but it was at odds with itself to me. So I wasn't particularly impressed.
Yeah, but I think that's more about his character than her character.
Maybe. You might be right about that. All I'm saying is it didn't particularly impress me the way it was portrayed. And yeah, retrospect, what you just said, thinking about it in hindsight, perhaps it was elevated to a degree that I didn't think it was. But nevertheless,
and she got ridden around on a bike. I
guess
raindrops would fall on your head.
There was one part. I guess when she was, you said when she was part of when she was in the tree shooting with them, like so she was equal with them, and she was teaching them Spanish. Like, all right,
but here's the
fine.
thing: what impressed me about this is, aside from actually that one part about her shooting with them, she was equals without being forced to be masculine.
Right.
And
fair enough.
I actually very much dislike the idea that for a woman to have as equal footing as a man, she must be as tough.
Yes, sure. Right.
Eddie here was feminine, but also had her own agency.
She was feminine because she wanted to be feminine, and not because they forced her to be that way. Or like, obviously, when she wanted to go on bank robberies, she was there with them. You know, in
you might
Bolivia.
have just convinced me. Like, I just upon seeing it at the time, it wasn't particularly impressive to me. But I guess those little examples you just pointed out may somewhat shift my thinking.
I actually thought and was thinking the entire time that she had a lot of her own agency in that. Insofar as she basically did what she thought she wanted to do.
So is that a
theme?
It's
not like when she's like, "I'll go with you. I'll sew your socks or whatever." I wasn't like, "Oh shit, they're making her sew their socks." She was like, "Oh, I want to go with you. I'm all right with sewing your socks or whatever the hell I can do."
All right. So is that you're saying that's part of the theme? All of this.
I think that was definitely a secondary theme.
Yeah,
throughout this.
I would agree.
All right.
So I think the culmination of everything makes me want to give it a 1. So
I think you guys again. I initially had a 0, but having said what we said, I think I will give it a 1. In fact.
Yeah, I'm also gonna give that a 1, just because I thought it did everything fairly well, and like you said, perhaps there are other movies that did some of the same themes better, but that doesn't mean that this did them poorly in any way. I thought that it did them well and addressed all the themes that it wanted to pretty well.
Steve-O.
I look at the antagonists as like these groups that are against our protagonists. One in America and then the other in Bolivia, like the Bolivian, I guess, army, or police at the end. No, I mean, like, I don't know whether it would be the police or like the army. The army only shows up for one scene, but like the posse that's hunting them in America is super effective, even though you never see their faces or hear them speak, and you barely know even who they are, other than a lot of talk between Butch and Sundance about who they might be, and then you find out, get confirmed in the paper. They were like a really effective boogeyman.
The daily exposition, I suppose, is the name of that paper.
Exactly. They were a really effective boogeyman for the two characters, and drove, like I said earlier, that singular focus that they had while they, throughout from the end of the intro until they actually went to Bolivia. So I would say that they're the main antagonists, and even though they don't actually end up being any part of the ending, there's always the specter of them there.
I'm going to tell you the real antagonist.
Okay. Is it society?
Then I'll tell you the real one.
It's the sins of your past that you can't escape. They're boogeymen, but they're representative of the, in a sense, justice, order coming after them. The army is also a symbol of justice, order. They can't escape who they are. In fact, maybe this is actually one thing. I didn't really buy their attempt to go legitimate. I know they're telling you that they're attempting to go legitimate, but I didn't feel it was ever honest, that they were ever even considering it. Like, this is another idea that we're going to...
This is another con.
Yes. So, maybe that and if I could find really a failing, like a major failing, maybe that scene wasn't strong enough to drive the point home. But the thing is, they can't escape who they are. They can't escape, like, the fact that they're criminals and that they're drawn to this. Like, for instance, they're hunted down because they have to escape because of robberies they committed in the past.
Right.
And they get caught in the end because someone recognizes them for the crimes they committed.
More
already.
recent robberies, yes.
So it's always that, like, the past coming to haunt them.
I guess. I mean, yes, I agree with that. But of course, I am going to say society, but not quite. Like, just, you know, the time's moving on, and like I said earlier, that they're sort of they're stuck in the roles that they've chosen. That yes, they've chosen for themselves because that's the skills that they possess, and that's no longer valid in the society at large.
So you say the past is the antagonist, you say the future is the antagonist.
Yeah, sort of.
And I say the Terminator is the antagonist. So.
Well, yes, I mean, they were effective too. The posse, yes, was a good antagonist, but
they're representative.
It's sort of more, exactly.
Every antagonist in every movie is representing something else.
They're more so than anything because you never see them. You don't know who they are. You have a vague, like, almost superstitious. They're almost
they're the monster in a horror movie that then sort of goes away.
So, like, again, they're either whether you want to view it as the railroad owner, as who's the antagonist, who's
capitalism is the enemy,
or whether you want to view it as the fact that they can't escape from what happened to them. I mean, Scott, you and we're kind of tied.
Yeah, well,
we're arguing the same, different sides of the same.
Exactly, I'm just about to say that, and actually, I give credence to. I give a third credit to each, and I think they were all good antagonists.
But that's the thing is, I don't know if the antagonist is the point of the movie, though. And I don't know. I think the protagonists are more.
It need not be, but it certainly is part of their character, at least, which is, I think, if not that, the main point.
Yeah, but like I don't think there is actually a focused antagonist. I should say.
That's why I said I cut up a third to everything.
But like no, but like,
whether tangible or corporeal or not.
Yeah, but it's an ethereal kind of like, but like it's something that shouldn't be. This is a character study, and you're more doing, in a sense, they have anti-hero flaws to them that are really what but I don't think there's an antagonist in this movie. Almost, I think that it just happenstance of what they're.
I see what you mean, but that could be its own antagonist, is what I'm saying.
Well, there's clearly something against them that's driving the plot, which is I would call an antagonist. You know, like I said, be it whatever you want to. Look at it as.
I think we're all right, or we all have valid points, and I think they all are present.
There's a force that opposes them, that is driving the plot for sure, driving where they're going, driving where they end up, and how they end up getting their asses murdered. So I would say, I mean, there's always that thing that's butting up against whatever they're trying to do.
Well, we don't have proof they got murdered because. They had to take an old-fashioned photo, which takes a long time, and they're just standing there.
They had to wait on one leg
for like 10
minutes.
I'm giving him 0.333 credit repeating on each of those themes, leading up to my 1.
Equaling a 1? Yeah, I'm going to give it a 1.
Oh, sorry. Each of those antagonists.
I'm torn, but because of the boogeymen, which were very effective, I have to lean toward... It's going to be a soft one, though. Okay, so I start the protagonist. Who I'm not sure who the protagonist is. No, like, but to the actual point, is there more of a focus on Butch or Sundance?
No, I think it's a 50-50 split.
No, it's a 50-50 split.
Yeah, I would say they're both protagonists.
It obviously is to me. Like,
I actually think Butch gets more. Maybe it's because he has more of a personality that he gets. It feels like there's more of a focus.
It switches. At first, it's sort of the movie wants you to think that Butch is. It's sort of like a 60-40 or even 70-30. But then, very quickly, and it stays at 50-50 for the rest of it.
I happen to like Butch a lot. First of all, I happen to like Paul Newman a lot, both for his movies and for the salad dressings.
Delicious.
But
You only get one Newman salad dressing joke per podcast.
I think we're already at like 2 or 3.
That's why I'm trying to curb it.
So I actually felt very attached to that character because I'm all talk. I
With
possess
bad
no
plans.
actual, with
And
bad
stealing
plans
other
that-
people's plans.
Yes, and I also happen to fall in love with best friends' girlfriends. So
And have not shot anyone yet.
yeah, I have not shot anyone yet. So I have Paul Newman, like Cat Haunted Roof, Cool Hand Luke. Like I just think he's a fantastic actor. So I'm going to give it a 1 just for him.
All right. Well,
But as a character himself, I think both of them did very well. Both of them were very developed, and they were very distinct from each other too. As I mentioned earlier, like Sundance is more stoic. Butch is kind of not the smarmy, because he's well-intentioned.
he's fucking
idiot
Autolycus.
almost.
He's a roguish, like I said.
Yeah. I mean,
A charming rogue. I don't know how else to put it.
And the worst part about it is, I feel that Butch, if he actually wanted to get legitimate, he would be very successful at that.
right.
Sundance, I don't believe could. I think he's kind of. I don't think he could change from the path.
He's
he
not
was
built
on.
for it, sure.
Yeah.
But they both possess interesting flaws that drive them to like this life of crime, and like everything that happens is their own fault in a way.
Mhm.
But they're very different people, but have great chemistry together. Robert Redford and Paul Newman have like work well together. So overall, I think this the duo is phenomenal.
Well, I agree that they have good chemistry, like you said, together. I bought that they were best friends and lived this rough and tumble life and did all these went on these adventures together, etc. This goes back. I wanted to make a broad point. Check out our new narratology cast about Aristotle's Poetics, where I think Aristotle would like these characters in this plot because they're tragic heroes. So yeah, I like Redford just as good as Newman. I believe they both did a good job in this as being best friends with each other in their history, and sure, the if not a love triangle, the relationship /
The platonic
Yes.
friend with,
Yeah.
whatever's
Sexual
happening
tension.
there. Whatever's happening there was more natural than not, just minus the jarring montages and all. But no, I mean they did a good job, and if there's one detracting thing, I think I'll save it for a question coming up later. But as protagonists themselves, I think it's going to be a good score.
I actually wanted to bring up quickly the relationship they had. It was, if another director had done this movie, they would have based more tension on with Eddie there. However, it did feel very natural how one was
The little group, I guess, sure.
yeah, like had the sexual relation and the other was you don't see that in many movies at all.
Sure.
Like,
No, yeah.
modern or
I agree.
back then, and this was like I can't even think of another one who kind of did this as well and as kind of natural as this one.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of just allowed to be what it was, or I don't know if that's actually the relationship that they had with Eddie, whatever her last name is, in real life. But it was kind of just allowed to be what it was without introducing some unnatural tension in that dynamic.
So let me ask you a question: does she count as a protagonist? Is she approaching that status?
No, she's definitely supporting.
I would say she's supporting.
Because, if only because the protagonists are so distinct.
Fair enough.
Right.
All right. Just wanted to throw that out there. But I'm gonna give them a 1. You got
Yeah, I
anything
was
else
going
to
to say
add?
I don't have much to add to that about the protagonists. I thought that they played really well off each other. The actors had awesome chemistry, and that helped out with how they worked off of each other narratively. So yeah,
Yeah, I'm giving it a 1 as well.
go
So,
with the 1.
Scott, we're on to supporting characters.
Woodcock 1.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Too bad. I can say it first. And also bicycle salesman 1
This movie is filled with great supporting
with colorful characters who themselves tell you that they are colorful.
And they get shot for it.
Yeah, old man in Bolivia 1.
Old man.
Sheriff trying to appeal to people and no one's buying it. The
Eddie.
one hooker who's giving this speech about how she loves Butch because he's such a great
As he's escaping from the posse,
escaping.
yes. As he's jumping out the window.
He's jumping
Sure.
out the window, yeah.
Sure,
Eddie,
so-
the one who played Eddie did a great job.
Yeah.
Like,
So yeah, you're right. She's like number 1 supporting character, and everyone else sort of fills out the world. and they all played a little part. Even like old man who ran the hotel, who they told to lie to the posse, like that was fine too.
No, super friendly cop in Bolivia. Like that guy was great. Like, adios.
Yes. So all of that, it all sort of like added,
The sheriff that they run
just
in,
said.
no, not in Bolivia. The sheriff who they tie up. He's like,
Oh,
you gotta tie me up. If anybody saw you coming in here, I don't
true.
want to be
Just
responsible.
cough out of him. So it all sort of like filled out their characters, or like these are the kinds of people they run into and meet and know and are like associates, if not friends with. So all of that, I think, I can't think of a one I didn't like, or that was annoying or somehow detracted from the narrative.
Although I liked him, the old mining guy singing did bother me. But I think
that was a little bit annoying. Yeah. He
So-
was supposed to grate on you.
Yeah. So everyone give it a 1?
I believe
Yeah.
so.
Steven, the dialogue.
Dialogue was really sharp in this film. I liked it a lot. The banter between the two of them really kept the scenes that could have been, as we mentioned, boring, interesting. Even when they are pinned down or whatever's going on, the dialogue's always good between them, and it's like it's not overdone. It's quick, to the point, but funny, and there's a lot of other dialogue throughout this film, especially with scenes with Eddie and all the supporting characters that is also well done. But I think what really shines out is those scenes where it's just the two of them together, either on the run or whatever they're doing at the time.
I don't remember a scene of exposition dumping.
Except for the newspaper.
Other
But
than
that
the
wasn't
newspaper.
exposition dumping, really. That was fine. It was more like exposition perusing, if you will.
Yeah.
Sure.
Everything was tight. Everything they made. I haven't seen this movie before. This is my first time. I knew the ending, but Steve and I were laughing out loud at many points in this film. I love the dialogue throughout this. Yeah, there might have been dragging parts in this, but that completely fell to the wayside of all of the I wasn't expecting this to be as funny of a movie as it was.
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking more of a straight Western, but I don't know. I particularly enjoyed this. Scott, you're grimacing.
This is the one that I was waiting to it was fine, I guess. It was a lot funnier to you guys than it was to me. And yes, so I chuckled at one or two parts, but for the most part, it wasn't grating, but it just didn't get to me. There's something about it that, again, I can't quite put my finger on why, but maybe it's just me being grumpy.
Scott doesn't appreciate witty banter.
Scott, you're taking over Ian's
not all
role
of
of
it. Not all of
curmudgeon.
it was witty. It was meant to be, I guess, at points, and it just wasn't to me. It was listening to old comedians. The jokes aren't relevant anymore, or at least maybe I just never liked that kind of comedy. Yes, some of it was, but a lot of the times you guys laughed, I didn't.
I'll give you.
And I want to say it was lame, but not. That sounds harsher than I mean it to be.
Dated is actually the perfect thing, because this definitely feels like an older style comedy, which I happen to appreciate.
Yeah,
and comedy is a very subjective thing.
Right. Sure, and when jokes are set up like that are just so obvious to me that and don't make me laugh, it's going to make me not like what I'm hearing. So, yeah, they rounded out again. Yes, they portrayed themselves as characters well, but what they were saying to each other, I believe that they would be saying it, but I just didn't like what was being said often. So I think this is I'm going to be harsh on this one and probably give it a 0.
Oh, no problem.
All right. Well, I'm giving it a 1.
I'm giving it a 1 as well. All right, and it's on to me for style. We already talked a little bit about the cinematography, and especially during the chase scene, it was absolutely fantastic. And I might give it full points just for that. It's an extended sequence in diverse vistas where you're seeing they kept the distance, as you mentioned earlier, Steve-O, perfectly, very tense. Bolivia had its own unique feel to it, although again, narratively it dragged a little bit. The locations were interesting,
beautiful landscape shots,
and they had we mentioned also earlier that throughout they have this kind of showing pictures
an old-timey montage.
Yeah, old-timey.
Silent movie kind of, almost.
The actors there, but as if they were taking photos back in the day. And those all worked fairly well and stylistically fit. So, is it the greatest style piece I've ever seen? No, but I thought it did its job well.
No, I pretty much agree. Where the dialogue fell flat, as I just said, the cinematography, I think, outshone that for sure. And the highlight, of course, was the chase scenes, the way they were framed and shown. And everything else was fine. And, I like the, as you just said, the old-timey photograph montages. Thought that was a good segment. It cut up the film nicely and showed you, like, segueing from basically part 1, part 2. All that was fine. And every other shot, even the gunfights, like we said, and the final freeze frame is, very famous and classic. So I think, style, for me, it contained a number of things that stood out, and I enjoyed about it.
I actually want to mention the sound, because you guys talked about the cinematography fairly well. There were a good amount of songs in this, which were okay. I mean, they were fine, but I think what really made the sound stand out was the sharpness of the sound effects. Like the horses' hoofbeats when they're running were like awesome, and like it's something that you might not notice unless you're really looking for
sure
it.
If I quite noticed it,
but it really like drives a point home that they're like running, and like like, it brings you right in the feel of like what this is trying to do, and like the gunfight scenes, with the gunshots, like just whoever did the sound editing on this, I think did a really awesome job in making everything really crisp and clear, and keeping using those sound effects to like bring you right in. So, like I said, you guys basically covered the cinematography. I thought it was beautiful, like landscapes, the shots of the vistas and like in towns and things like that were really well done. There was actually one thing I want to mention. There were a couple really interesting shots that looked like they were like really trying to take chances with in terms of cinematography. There's one where the camera is following or like moving left along a fence, and like every so often you can see through like broken slats in the fence and things like that, which I thought was really cool. Just a really good shot. And there are a few other times like that where they did some like interesting things with the camera work. So I think style was pretty great all the way through on this.
All right, so I'm giving it a 1.
I'm giving it a 1. I didn't quite like the soundtrack was neither here nor there for me, but I see what you mean. I didn't notice it quite at the time. But there's nothing I can say again that I didn't like about it, and it was all fine for what I do remember of it. So
right, I'm also going to give it a 1.
That plus the cinematography is going to be a 1.
All right, so Scott, would you recommend it?
Now another hard one. I think I've given this a decent score so far, and you guys convinced me on a couple points that I earlier was going to give zeros to. But nevertheless, again, the question that I try to answer this too is: someone said to me, "I've never seen Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid. It's on the And I believe, as a quick caveat, Steve-O, you said it dropped a number of positions.
It dropped
on the
like
list.
30 spots, I think, from 97 to between 97 and 2007.
I think it should have dropped spots. Like again, I understand it's a classic movie and it was fine, but I may sort of forget about it in a week that I even saw it. So my overall impression was it was okay. It was a very well done, put together movie, but nothing about it quite stands out. Everything contained in it was, like I said, pulled off perfectly fine. But I can't really say anything about it that's amazing. Yeah. So so my answer would be skip it, and if my answer is skip it, then it probably means it's a 0.
Fair enough.
All right. I would. Well, I my overall impression of this movie was from the very beginning. I really liked it, and like the style kind of pulled me in right away, and then the dialogue, kept me in, and then I got kind of invested in the characters and all that type of stuff. Like kind of everything that I want to happen with a movie happened with this one, and kind of made me really enjoy it. And what I would say to somebody if you haven't seen this film yet is that it certainly deserves one watch.
According to you,
I mean,
go on.
I think it does. If you're into westerns, you'll probably like it. If you're into cinematography or just studying classic films, you definitely should watch it. So I'm gonna be favorable in this for this question.
Well, I'm gonna give it a 1 as well. I really enjoyed watching this movie. Yeah, it dragged a little bit at the end, but overall, I was invested for most of this. I liked all the characters. I laughed quite a bit throughout it, and I think that it's perhaps one if you made it like a double feature with like Easy Rider or with Cool Hand Luke or those kind of 60s, and it would work very well. If you made it a double feature with like Unforgiven or something like that, I think it would work very well too, because they're both kind of breaking off of the traditional Western mentality.
Right.
Yeah, but why? Like you're saying, basically, if you made a double feature, it'd be better. Essentially,
No,
or, like,
I'm just saying
you
that
get something more
you
out of
can-
it.
You
But
can pair
that's
it.
what it seems.
But I
Yeah, you
actually
can, but
Steve, we had this discussion earlier. I think that this movie works better in the context of its time and with what it's trying to accomplish, and in comparison with similar works, because then you get to actually appreciate what they taken in a vacuum. I don't think this movie's as good as taking it in its time and
That's
place.
exactly what I'm trying to say. It so like that's a point I wanted to raise. Is all.
Well, no, that's fair, but regardless, I think it works still.
Okay.
And again, I think this, well, maybe not the most important film to watch if you're into the history of a movie, because again, this can be replaced with others of a similar type. I think it's at a crossroads of different, in its time and place, it's at a crossroads of dealing with the evolution of Westerns and dealing with the evolution of the anti-authoritarian. So I think that this is representative of multiple. So in that way, I definitely recommend it. So I'll give the scores now. Steven and myself gave this movie a 10, and Scott, who is taking my role for the night, is give it an 8. So overall, this is a 9.33, and I think that's very well deserves to be on the AFI 100, in my opinion, at least.
Well, you guys can go be Butch Cassidy in Sundance, and I'll just ride off on a bicycle.
You can be Etta and go back to America.
So I'm Jonathan Manzer, here with Scott Thurlow.
See you next time.
And Stephen Rossi.
Have a good one.
We hope you've enjoyed your stay.
MOTSterpiece Theatre.
Join us again next time, won't you?
MOTSterpiece Theatre.
Music and editing by Chris Morgan.
MOTSterpiece Theatre.
Editing and engineering by Stephen Ramosi.